is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 1, Episode 12, Clash of the Tritons? In this episode, there's a secret society at the school that Duncan seems to be a part of that caused a kid to almost die, and I become super disappointed in Duncan until it turns out everything's fine. And then everything isn't fine. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. I want to thank Agnes for commissioning this episode this week. Thank you very much. I am really thrown by the way this episode ended. Normally I watch these episodes twice, and this week I was not able to squeeze it in. I've just been a little bit nuts. Finally starting to figure out how to manage things, but this time I watched it right before I started here. So it was like 3 minutes ago that I finished this episode, and I just can't wrap my head around the way it ended, because that is like a pretty big deal, and I feel really bad for Logan if it's what it looks like. And if it's not what it looks like, I still feel pretty bad for Logan. So Chris says, so wait, you've already seen the episode. Yes, Chris, I'm covering the episode. So this episode starts off with, oh God, where to begin? Because there are several different storylines happening in this one. I'm going to start off with the main, case of the week here, which is a kid gets yanked into the principal's office he was caught on camera having literally dumped his friend in front of the emergency room doors when his friend was drunk and passed out, and he left him there. And then he tries to tell them that he got the fake ID from Veronica Mars, which the camera zooms in on his lips when he says her name, like, this is such a bombshell. And I have to admit, I don't think it even crossed my mind that he was going to say Veronica's name, which it should have, because everybody's always her enemy. And she's definitely somebody that if I were, in the gossip mill at that school, and somebody told me they heard that she made fake IDs, I would believe that in a heartbeat. No questions asked. I would just be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because she's somebody who has access to all kinds of stuff that the average person doesn't, because of what her father does, because of her connections to the police department. There is just no way that I just would never doubt it at all. And yet, when they ask what he's doing, or who he got it from, and he pauses before, really dramatically before he says her name, it never occurred to me. I feel like such a dope. And he tells her this story that if she didn't get evidence pretty quickly that there was actually a secret society at the school, I would have thought was complete horseshit from the go. He tells her that we don't know who all of them are, and yet I was out drinking with, the whole thing is really convoluted. And he says that he just got an invitation in his locker. So it turns out, because I initially, when it was he wasn't actually a part of this crew that he's blaming for all of this, I was like, how does he know so much about the inner workings of this all then? But it turns out that he was invited and just didn't make it to the final round. So that's the reason that he blames them. But Veronica wants to know why he went after her. And that's a whole other thing that I will get into a little bit later in the episode. So that's the summary of the case of the week. The sort of like undercurrent that's happening throughout is the class dealing with the grief of Lily dying. Anya says, I think he said he wasn't even invited. Oh, really? I thought she said that. Okay. See, this is what I get for watching it once. So the grief counseling. I was a little surprised that this is still going on because of it being like, what, a year now? Since Lily passed away? A little over, because I think they said her year anniversary was like a couple episodes ago. And I have to be perfectly honest that I love the fact that they specify that the grief counselor got a grant approved, because otherwise there's no way. Like, public schools are not going to spend this kind of time, whether a student died or not. The only schools that I could see having this kind of prolonged counseling would be schools that experienced like a mass shooting, which, you know, what, like 50% of schools at this point, probably. So I guess I shouldn't scoff at it the way that I did. Oh, that's what it is, Chris. His brother and father were invited. I knew his father was, but I didn't realize his brother. That's what it is. Okay, so he got left out. Got it. So yeah, I like that they specify that she got this grant in order to continue the grief research. And Veronica, not cool at all, girl. At all. Not okay with this. I get that she wants her friend's killer to come to justice. I really do. But you're just sitting there listening to people's therapy sessions that are supposed to be in confidence. Nah. No. It's not even that she has a particular, like, theory that she's trying to prove. She's not even going into this with an objective in mind already. She's just trawling for anything. And that's what I really have a problem with. Like, either way, I would be side-eyeing the hell out of it. But if I felt like there was something specific that she knew she needed that was going to, like, lead her in a certain direction, or that was going to, like, ironclad prove, but she doesn't even have anything in mind that she wants any of them to say. And what could she do with the information that she's getting so far? It's not like she can talk to anybody about it because they haven't said anything to anyone else. So her knowing at all is going to be a huge issue. Like, I would want to know where the fuck she found out this information. And it's just so not her business, most of it. Like, the thing with Weevil and Lily. Listen, I understand her curiosity with that, and maybe there's something there in her mind, but there's not enough gleaned from these sessions for me to feel like this was of value at all, except for her being a voyeur. And Duncan, too, like, now she's like, well, what pills are you taking? Fuck you. Who cares? Like, don't you this is none of your business. What does this have to do with Lily? Like, and if it turns out to actually have something to do with Lily, then maybe I'll eat my words. But at the moment, I got real pissed at her. Like, this is just so far out of line. And I just can't believe that she went to these lengths without it even being part of an investigation, like a specific piece of the investigation. It's just a straight up, well, let me see what people say. I don't know. Nope. Thumbs down. Don't like it. And I have a feeling that this is going to happen again. That she's going to, not just in this sense, you know, listening in on people's conversations with the school counselor, but I think that she's maybe going to take some other steps that I'm not super okay with either. And I'm just not looking forward to that, because there really has to be a line somewhere. And if you don't respect anybody's boundaries in any way at all, what kind of person are you? I like, there has to be a line you don't cross with your friends, like people that you trust you. Like, I don't know. This is not okay with me. And she does it in like the sort of like hackiest way, where she puts a microphone into a stapler and then messes with the stapler while she's talking to Ms. James. And she pretends to drop it and then bends over and pulls an identical stapler out of her bag, which this is one of those things that a lot of shows do that I'm always just like, but how did you know exactly what stapler though to buy, to copy? But it's fine. And she also overhears Logan, and Logan is of particular interest to me. Like, he has been this whole time, as you guys know. Every time that you ask me, who do I want to know more about? It's like Duncan and Logan. We don't really get a lot from Duncan. He just, there's the things about the pills, and there's I feel like my sister is watching me, and that she's still like giving me the same look when my mom flips out on me that she used to. Like, I can feel her there. And with Logan, there's a surprising amount of self-loathing and animosity there that once you hear the whole story, it starts to be a little bit more clear. So Logan, it turns out, was much more on again, off again with Lily than I realized. There was, the scenes that we've seen of the two of them together, it felt like they were a much steadier, like kind of iconic high school couple than it turns out they were. Apparently they did the thing that most high school couples do, which is fight and break up and get back together, and fight and break up and get back together. And they were in the middle of a lull, and he kissed some girl at a party when Lily stood him up and didn't come. And Veronica was the one who saw him kissing this other girl and told Lily. And Lily did not want to see him after that. And he blames Veronica in part for Lily's death because he feels that if Veronica hadn't told Lily that he was kissing some other girl, Lily would not have pushed him away, and she would not be alone when whoever killed her came after her. So he blames Veronica in large part for this, which is a very circuitous thing, but honestly, in terms of like human nature and the way that we deal with grief and blame and all of this, it makes 100% sense to me. Like, it's a stupid thing to blame her for because but it is a little bit like, it's a twofer, really. You get to be angry at somebody specific when you don't have anyone that you can specifically blame because the killer does not seem to have been found. I don't know how much he believes that the guy who's been arrested and confessed is actually the killer. Like, I don't know how much Logan even really knows about the case. It's sort of unclear how much he has pursued on his own in terms of like finding out information. But he has somebody to blame in Veronica, and I'll bet this is not the first time that Veronica observed behavior of his and sent it back to her friend. So there's also like probably a low level, like simmering sort of resentment that's been there between the two of them for a minute. And this is just a really nice, easy, like crescendo for all of that. And it like his whole vibe towards her, which I had almost entirely assigned to her father's investigation of Duncan's dad, turns out to be based on almost not that at all. Like, he doesn't even mention that factor in the counseling session, which maybe you wouldn't. Maybe it's still a factor and he just doesn't talk about it in the session. But I was just really pleased to get a little bit more information on why he seems to hate her so much when it wasn't like they were super chummy before, but he just didn't seem to have an issue with her before the way he did. And there was an undertone, now that I like look back at the way that he interacted with her, I can see that derisive sort of like resentment that she's still alive when Lily isn't. underlying a lot of the way he talked to her and reacted to her. So that's all making more sense. But then the counselor asks him, well, you know that there's another way to look at this, which is that if you had been with her the night she died, you might have died too. To which he says, what's so great about being alive? Which that is a fair fucking question, my dude. And Veronica, listening like a creep in her car to this conversation, stops and stares at the radio like she can't believe that he just said that. And it's really, this is one of those things that's really close to my heart in particular, because I think we all know people who deal with mental illness and depression and suicidal thoughts. Maybe you do yourself. I know I have had problems with this. And somebody like Logan is the kind of person that everyone discounts as not only would he never struggle with this in the first place, but that if he heard somebody talking about it, he would immediately discount it and just sort of talk about like manning up. Like, I would not expect Logan to make this kind of statement if I were one of his classmates, but also I would expect him to snort and call somebody a pussy if they did. And it is a really nice character thing to have him coping with all of this while being the, like, I hesitate to even say problem child, because there seems to be other people that also pull some worse shit at her school, but he is one of the problem children. Like, I think all the teachers would probably agree on that. And there often is this kind of struggle with feelings of self-loathing, with abuse and whatnot, underlying that sort of behavior. But it's treated in a way that can be really sort of saccharine in a lot of stuff, where like, oh, see, he had no choice but to become what he is because he's been abused. And they're not giving Logan that total way out and excuse for his behavior. They're just giving him reasons, and they're letting us understand the mindset that he has and a lot of the history behind why he's like feeling the way that he is and making the choices that he does. He's just such an interesting character and a really nice example of just how you never know who's struggling with this kind of shit. You just never know. Like, so these are the things that she overhears. And then there's the one about Weevil. And Weevil, it turns out, had a brief fling with Lily. So there was a thing between the two of them, but it wasn't prolonged, and evidently she did not take it seriously the way that he did. And he says that he knows she felt it too, but obviously she has not talked about that with Veronica. That might be the secret that she was talking about. I have a secret, it's a big one, and maybe she hooked up with him. Maybe she was actually seeing him for real and was going to tell Veronica before things like, hit a rocky patch or whatever. But the fact that he's so sure she felt it too, I don't feel like Weevil's the kind of guy who's going to get like real sentimental immediately. Sometimes dudes can surprise you, but he does not strike me as that type. So I don't know exactly what criteria we have never seen Weevil with another girl, right? He's not exactly a Romeo. The only girl that we consistently see him around ever really is Veronica. So the fact that he really feels that she felt the same way that he did, I tend to think that there is a reason for that. And I tend to think that if she decided to get away from him, because the counselor reads him letters that she gave to her. Lily gave her the letters to prove that there was a boy that she was having trouble with in her gym class that she wanted to get away from. And the letters are from Weevil to Lily. And I feel like Lily transferring, she's not a coward, right? She's not somebody who's like, oh, I broke up with this guy and I just can't bear to look him in the eye anymore. I have to go to another class. Yeah, that's not who she is. Like, from what I have seen, the limited moments, she doesn't feel like somebody who would have any problem if something didn't work out with some dude. She would not have any problems being around him, maybe continuing to flirt with him and tease him, like, God knows. If she transferred classes specifically because of Weevil, it's because she really did feel something and she could not be around him because something had happened that made her feel like this just can't happen. It's out of the question. And being around him was just too hard for her. And that's the only thing I can think. And it's an interesting detail that the class that they were in together was gym. Because really, what class could you see the two of them both being in? Like, there's the poetry class that we saw Veronica and Weevil and the other kid in, Caleb Casey. And that was still a surprise, the fact that Weevil was, like, in a poetry class. So, yeah, there clearly is something there, but I just don't know what Veronica plans to even do about that because she's not supposed to know about this. So what is she gonna try and just like coax him and poke at him till he confesses to this? I mean, he barely wanted to say anything to a counselor who was holding actual proof in her hand. The only thing I could see is if she caught a glimpse of the tattoo. Because he came really close, I feel like, to telling Logan exactly what that tattoo was about. And I feel like if Veronica caught sight of it because of how close she was with Lily, that he might actually tell her the truth. But getting that, I mean, I don't think Veronica is aware that he has that tattoo, or else this wouldn't have been as total a shock as it seemed to be to her. Agnes is saying Lily was a year ahead of Duncan / Logan / Weevil / V, which I guess is Veronica. So that's weird. Like, I guess that they're mixed level classes, but I'm just not, I was never in classes with kids ahead of me in school. Like, the only things that I was in, were after school stuff like chorus and drama and all of that. So yeah, that's definitely not a thing in my school, but maybe it is in other schools. Interesting. But yeah, so I'm just like, I really do. The main question I have for Veronica is just like, yes, and like, what do you plan to do about this? So, all right. I feel like we've talked about that enough. By the end of this episode, that recorder is still in the stapler. So I feel like this is going to continue to be a thing. I'm not looking forward to it. Like, I'm looking forward to it as a viewer because I do want to know, and it's interesting. And they're acting in that scene. I mean, that's the first time Weevil's gone to show any sort of emotion beyond anger at all. Except for that one moment that we see him crying at Lily's memorial. So I'm excited to like see a little bit more range from him. And I imagine these scenes will give him the space to do that. But I'm not looking forward to it in terms of how much I dislike that Veronica is doing this. Let's see. Or you can fail gym or need to transfer to a different hour because of a schedule conflict. Yeah, see, that's the kind of, like, our school wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let you transfer to a different class levels. Like, they'd just be like, well, take it next year. But yeah, I had math, science, and gym with mixed grades. So yeah, apparently that's a thing in some schools. I thought that Weevil was in Lily's class, but held back a year. I could be wrong though. That would make sense. Okay. I could see that. So, all right. So let's go back and talk about this, this conspiracy with this kid, this dumbass. Do you know when he gets hauled in there and he waits a minute before he says Veronica Mars, I really thought right there, oh, he made it. This fucker made it himself. But then this whole thing with the Triton Club, I just hate saying the word Triton. It doesn't roll off the tongue. That seemed to actually have legs. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess there's some weird conspiracy against Veronica, which wouldn't be out of the question. When he tells her about this club, and it seems to have members that are even older, like he's talking about his dad a couple times, I thought maybe Lamb set her up, because Lamb obviously doesn't like her. And I don't know if he went to the school, like if he's supposed to be a local who grew up here. If he was a member of this club, maybe that would be a thing that he would do, is set up all of the, like, as an alumni, set up the remaining members to implicate her. I don't really, do you guys remember what the explanation is for how she had all that fake ID stuff in her locker already? Because I don't remember, like, I know that had to have been mentioned, but they go to her locker, they meet her there right after class, and she is really blithe and unconcerned when they want to look in her locker, which of course, that's her. And she opens it without a care in the world, thinking that there's no problem here. I didn't do what they're saying that I did. So this is just going to take a minute, and then they'll realize there's nothing. But she opens it and there's a bunch of fake ID shit in there. Chris says he planted it on the way to the principal's office. But how though? Like, it's a locker. It's locked. How did he break in there? Is he a lockpick? Like, there are slits. Oh, he just stuffed it in. Oh, okay. All right. I guess it is all like paper and stuff. I'm sorry I'm rubbing my eyes so much, guys, but like, I feel like I got something in this eye and it's like driving me nuts if it's stuck to my contact or I don't know what. So they find all of this stuff. Veronica's like completely caught off guard and they arrest her because this is serious. Like, making fake IDs is no joke. And she gets hauled in front of everybody wearing handcuffs, which is, I just can't think of a more scandalous thing to happen in the middle of a school. Like, just, I don't think anybody got arrested while I was in school. And if they had, I would never forget it, because that is just such a dramatic thing. And I feel bad for her because she's already got this crazy reputation. And even though she gets released and all the charges are dropped and whatever, that's still a photo that somebody has of her. And she makes a joke about how I hope that shot makes it into the yearbook. And I'm like, I bet it does. I bet you it does. Like, she's joking around, but I think she's half serious because she knows. And I just really felt for her in that moment. I was like, God damn, that's a lot. And she starts to look into this club, and the kid finally tells her who's part of it, the whole thing. And Duncan is part of it. And she's simultaneously investigating them and sending Wallace out to figure out where he can get a fake ID. Initially, he doesn't get any bites. Nobody's talking to him. Real quick aside, any of y'all ever try to get a fake ID when you were in school? I didn't try real hard, but I asked around a little bit, and oh man, I'm such a nerd, but I didn't even want it to drink. I wanted it to get into dance clubs because I wanted to go dance, and a lot of them were 21 and up, and I wasn't even planning on drinking. But I could not find a place to get one. And it's one of those things that was like talked about by other people in such a casual way and is talked about on TV in such a casual way that it gives you the impression that this is real easy to find. So I appreciated a lot that Wallace goes out there trying to find one, and he doesn't have any luck right away. Like, he kind of has to bully somebody into telling him. And because I have no idea if there was even a source in my town at all. Like, that was how, it wasn't like somebody told me and that person said, no, I don't do that. Or that, I just couldn't get to whomever they suggested. It was a straight up, nobody had any idea who to talk to or where to go. So he finally sees somebody that was in his class come in and buy a 6-pack to the shop that he works in. And he pulls him aside and is like, hey, so there's some cameras here that will show you using a fake ID to get this booze. And either you tell me where you got that shit or I will turn you in. And they tell him that for $250, he can get one if he drops that money and his name off in a locker at school, locker 110, which once I realized how much it cost, I was like, no wonder I never found out if somebody made them. Like, even if I could afford it, which I could not have, I wouldn't pay it. So, and Veronica gives him her money with a little bit, like, she actually says something like, well, is it worth it to you to spend $250 to see if this works? And he's like, no, it's worth it to you. Like, girl, you thought he was going to give you, get out of here. So she gives him the money and puts up a fake display in one of the cases at school that's got a bunch of cameras in it. And has one of the cameras pointed at the locker so that she can film whoever comes to pick up the money. And of course, the camera is zoomed in such a way that you cannot see anybody around that top locker. So that when the locker door, like, opens and closes and whatever, it opens and closes later on, I guess, like, but he doesn't have to actually open or close it in order to get the money out. But in any case, the camera does not capture him. It turns out that he has the locker below it and that he reaches up through a hole in the locker that's in the roof of his own in order to get to the one above it and get the money out. And the one flaw in this plan that I can see is that suppose there's not money in there, and nobody dropped anything off for the day. Suppose that nobody and he's just floundering around, like, hopefully, and gets his arm caught. Like, I don't know. It's a very, like, good system, really, for the most part. But I just kept having, like, visions of just how awkward this could be. And she gets an ID, but I don't remember exactly where they drop it off because it can't be in the locker, is it? Or is that how it opens? Is the locker is not being used at all and so doesn't have a combination, maybe? And so when he's done with the creation of the ID, he puts it in that empty locker for somebody to pick up later. Maybe that's what it is. Help me out here, guys. And Nancy says, I think they dropped it in her locker. Maybe. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. Yeah, it's a pretty good system. But when she gets it, it's really shitty quality. She's not impressed. She's super pissed, actually, that she spent $250, got a garbage fake ID, and got nothing on her camera for her trouble either. Let's also talk about the fake IDs that she has in her wallet when they look her up. Because she has a fake, 22-year-old Veronica Mars ID for the state of California. She's got a, licensed massage therapist ID, which is such a weird one. Like, my mother's a licensed massage therapist, and they don't give you laminated cards with your picture on them for that. But, okay, that's fine. There's one for, the college campus ID. And I know there was a fourth one, but I don't remember what it was. But she's got a bunch of stuff going on in her wallet, and I really enjoy how totally unconcerned she is when they come to her to open her locker, how much righteous indignation she has when they open it and there's a bunch of stuff in there that she knows isn't hers, but then how her attitude adjusts a little bit when they look through her wallet and find out all of the stuff that she's got that very much is hers, and that's on her. which is pretty entertaining. And I figure it's not going to be much for her to like replace all of that. But if you guys could make fake IDs to get in somewhere, where would you get them made for? I can't even think of any place that I would like be that interested that you need that sort of ID to get around. Like, really, the only thing that I can think of is like some sort of backstage thing for like Comic-Con or to get into like a movie premiere or something like that. But no permanent buildings or anything that I would be particularly interested in checking out. But, you know, she needs that stuff for her work. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand why she has a lot of it. I wish that we had seen why she needed the massage therapy one, because I feel like that had to be hilarious. If any of you have watched Orphan Black, there's a scene in that you may remember with a character that I will not name who impersonates a massage therapist, and it's hilarious. Sorry. I'm just laughing remembering that. So, remember I said that there was a lot going on this episode. Let's talk about what's going on with Logan's dad. Logan's garbage dad, who I hate. I have to be straight up with you. I thought he was full of shit. I don't know if this actor isn't great and if that's what it is. But when he goes to talk to Veronica's dad about what's going on, I really thought he was the one selling the photos, or I don't know what I thought. Like, I basically felt like everything he said, and this may be true, despite the fact that he wasn't behind this ultimately. But when he says to Keith, like, my wife is really delicate right now. I don't know how much more she can take. The tone of all of this was so saccharine and so like laden with false consternation that I really felt like he was up to something. And I think maybe it was just him trying to imitate human emotion. And he's just, do you think that because a lot of like sociopaths and psychopaths have to learn how to mimic people in order to like get through life, that they get drawn to being actors because that's what they have to do in reality anyway? And so they're really good at acting because they can already like fake being feeling emotional people. But yeah, he's worried because somebody has continued to sell photos to the press of him and apparently some trysts that he's had. I'm not even remembering what the photos were of specifically, but he wants it to stop, wants to find out who's selling them. And Veronica's dad looks into it, and surprise, surprise, it's Logan's mom. She's selling them in order to hurt him the way that he hurt her, which makes all the sense. Totally makes sense. And I love that he's like, she can't handle any more scandal, and she's the one that's perpetuating this whole thing. It's pretty great. He just underestimated her. And this happens right after a situation with Logan when he comes to school and everybody's looking at him weird because of what happened with his dad getting stabbed. And he gets to his locker and there are a bunch of tabloid pictures taped to the locker. And he finds all of this after sitting in the car listening to a couple of fucking shock jocks talking about how they don't understand why his dad would ever want to bang anyone else when he's married to who he's married to. And there's a dude who's standing next to his locker who says, for what it's worth, I think your mom's way hotter. And Logan loses his shit and the two of them get into a fight and get pulled apart. And his dad comes to pick him up because he's being sent home early and is like, listen, I'm mad at you for getting in trouble, but also I'm kind of proud of you for sticking up for your mom. To which Logan says, oh, you're proud of me? Goody. I love that reaction because seriously, You fucked so many other women, dude. You don't get to be proud of your son for him standing up for his mom. Like, you are just trash. Stop it. And I had forgotten, there's a moment in the because when I did an Eccles Family Christmas, that was paid as a live watch. So I watched that episode on camera and then recorded on it. And I didn't get a chance to rewatch it. And of course, you know, when I know that there are people watching me and chatting here and there, like, it can distract a little bit. So I didn't remember at all that Aaron looks into the eyes of the woman that he apparently told he loved, whom he slept with, and tells her, I don't know you. Wow. No wonder she stabbed him. I had completely forgotten that's the last thing that he says to her before she stabs him. Yeah. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame. I can't believe he fucking did that. Like, how are you... You know what? We know how, because he's trash. I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. So Aaron winds up meeting up with Logan and... What is it, Logan's mom's name again? They meet up at where? The office? Keith's office? I don't even remember. Lynn, thank you, Nancy. And they are talking this over, and he gets in her face and tells her how he will divorce her and leave her with absolutely nothing. No cars, no house, no maid. And rightfully, Logan is livid and gets in his dad's face and says, if you say one more word to her, I'll kill you. And he says it in a way that is scary. Like, this is a real moment. I don't know how he's going to pay for that later. I feel like he will. But that moment was a bit of a fist pump moment. Just, Logan is gonna take his own beating, and he'll do it practically silently. Like, we hear the belt hit him, but we don't hear him screaming. So that's fine. But God forbid this man come after his mother. Not gonna fly. And you see Aaron, like, sit back and look at his son in shock. He was not ready for him to step in at all to defend. Like, I'm so proud of you for defending your mom, except against me, is the subtext there. And his mom says, I can't take this anymore. And she gets up and gets in her car. She swallows a pill, which, you know, it could, I'm guessing it's a Valium, something to calm her down. She starts driving. We cut away to what's going on with Veronica. And then when we get to the very end of the episode, we hear the police scanners talking about a car matching her, the description of her with a very specific license plate on it. And it is parked by, like, on the freeway, blocking up a bunch of traffic, abandoned, and the driver is missing. And they all figure that it was a jumper. And I don't know whether to believe that she actually jumped or faked her own death, or if Logan's dad killed her. I feel like there's no way he could have caught up with her. Like, he was still sitting there when she got up and left. Or, I don't know. Like, there's any number of different scenarios. But if she just jumped, that's so horrifying. And, I mean, Logan's clearly got a lot of survivor's guilt regarding Lily already. If his mother kills herself, he's not going to get over this shit. Like, this is just going to be part of his DNA. And he already has so much baggage from an abusive father that a mother killing her, like, I don't know how you come back from that. And I know people do. I know people have gone through this kind of thing and worse. But yikes. Like, I'm sincerely worried about him. yeah, I just don't know what to make of that. So we'll see next episode what winds up happening with that. But I mean, talk about the press swarming you. There's already this like whole scandal with him getting stabbed and the women that he's been sleeping with and all of these photos getting leaked. Now his mom, Aaron's wife, is missing. Forget it. They're not going to get rid of paparazzi at all. Like, this is going to be a fucking nightmare for them. Yikes. So that's what's going on there. I've pretty much talked about all I want to talk about regarding the Tritons because I don't find them that interesting, but I will talk about the karaoke scene, which things start to really like accelerate in terms of urgency for Veronica because she's not only being charged with making these fake IDs, she is getting sued. Her family is getting sued, along with the bar that served them like as underage kids. And I think there was another, and what's his face is getting sued. Like the whole thing, the parents of the kid that is now in a coma are suing everybody that they can think of who was in any way responsible for this. And so this really lights a fire under her ass. And she goes to this karaoke club where it's a bunch of underage kids singing karaoke and drinking. And I have to think to myself that if this lawsuit had gotten public, in reality, there's no way that anybody is being let into this club to drink. Like, they would be cracking down so hard. But, okay. And she gets there, and we already have Duncan there, drunk, singing on the stage when she arrives. She tries to question him about the Tritons, and he keeps responding in weird nonsense sentences that are not, like, the last one that he says, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, something like that, is the sentence that you use to give handwriting samples because it shows every letter. And in general, he is disappointing her the way that he was disappointing me because she can't believe that he would be party to an organization that would be responsible for this kid almost dying. Maybe he's gonna die. And not give a shit, apparently. So she's like about to leave, and he comes up to her and gives her a note. And it's somebody saying that, you know, they are the Grand Titan and they'll talk to her in the bathroom afterwards at such and such a time. So she has to hang around, and somebody submitted her name for karaoke. So she has to get up there and sing one way or another. And this went on way too long. She does a pretty good job. I'll give her that. But damn, show, I don't need to see the whole song plus the like ending chorus, which is like the same phrase repeated 8 times. I didn't need it. But they give her like scores of 10 because apparently they're out in the audience scoring it. People are saying, no, it was awesome. She killed it. Megan says, I loved it. All right, I guess. Fine. Like, I think I've been on record saying that I don't like musicals and I don't like watching people sing. I find it extremely awkward. Yes, I recognize the hypocrisy of that as somebody who does like to sing. Can't help it. So when she starts it off, I was like, oh, this is fun. I like this. And then it just went on way too long. And I was just like, all right, y'all, please help me out. So she goes to, Nancy agrees with me, agreed, did not need 3 minutes. Thank you, Nancy. Somebody. She goes into the bathroom afterwards, and there's some guy with this crazy voice talking about how he's the Grand Titan. And I was like, what is happening here? And sure enough, she bangs the door open, and it's like the club manager. And he was paid $20 to sit in here and say this stuff to her and has no idea what she's even talking about. And we find out later it's because this crew had nothing to do with that kid, and they're just fucking with her because they know they had nothing to do with it, and they don't really feel bad about it. And that's fine. But I felt for her in that moment because it really seems like she went up there and sang that song in exchange for this information that wound up being nothing, which I'm pretty sure was their intention. So they got her to like kind of humiliate herself, even though she didn't. She did well. But that was the intent, in order to just give her absolutely no lead at all. So that sucks. But yeah, what it winds up being, wrapping up here, the kid that dumped his friend is the one who made the IDs. His own for him and his friend were better. The ones that he makes for other people are a little shoddier. And him and his friend had gone out to drink and celebrate all of the money that they were making with their little side business. And his friend overdid it just because, not because somebody was pushing them and hazing them to drink too much, which is still very much a thing. But they were just overdoing it. And his friend, whom he dumps, he like panics realizing what this could mean and just gives Veronica's name because her dad investigated somebody who was embezzling money from a company and got his father in all this trouble, and his parents wound up filing for bankruptcy and getting divorced and yada, yada, yada. And he blames Veronica's dad because he says that Veronica's father never mentioned the fact that my dad was cheated out of his bonus like 3 years in a row. So in this kid's mind, his father embezzling was justified because he was being ripped off by the people he was working for. Which, that's one of those things where I'm like, in the spirit of it, I agree. I'm anti-capitalism. I mean, capitalism is just the worst thing that's ever happened, except for so many other things. And I understand why he is so angry at the injustice of it in general. But what her father mentioned in his report is really not what's relevant. Like, blame the lawyer. Blame, whoever was the one in charge of, defending your dad. Her father busted him for something that he was actually doing. And if he couldn't make a case as to why that was justified, well, that's not her problem. That's not her dad's problem. So there's just a lot of, let's blame Jessica. I keep calling her that. Let's blame Veronica going around. And it's so, it must get really old being her, how much of this can you really take before you just start to be like, you know what, guys, fine. Blame me for everything. I'm moving. I'll just be your boogeyman that you can just say all of this shit about for as long as you want, because who cares? This is out of here. And it's pretty tough. I sympathize with the kid, but him blaming her, he's essentially telling her that her dad's investigation led to his parents divorcing, which, if somebody's embezzling money, I am a believer that it's just a matter of time before that shit gets found out. I'm sure there are people who get away with it and nobody ever hears anything about it. But come on, how long was your dad really going to be able to keep this up? But of course, he doesn't want to believe that of his dad because his dad's great. Sure he is, kid. And you left out the best part about how he was caught. Oh, yeah, that's right. She puts the money in the envelope to pay for her fake ID. He's trying to be like, well, whatever. This is just my money. That doesn't prove anything. And she tells Lamb to check the top bill. And by the way, she made a wager with Lamb that if she doesn't have the guy by the end of the day that actually did this, she will go into court and confess to literally anything he wants to throw at her. So when they pull this kid's wallet out and see the money, he tries to protest that that's just my money. But they pull a bill out on the top that says, Veronica Mars is smarter than me. And she that was a little giveaway bill that she put in the stack so that they'd be able to tell it was the same money. Which, spoiler alert, Veronica Mars is smarter than most of us. So that was pretty rad. So thank you for pointing that out, Chris, because I forgot that detail. Yeah, so that's that. Is there any questions that you guys have for me? I'm running a little over time here, but I would like to... Oh, right. We have to do the weekly check-in on who killed Lily. I'm sticking with her dad. Like, we're getting such little bitty bits of information so slowly that's not going to change until something blows this shit wide open. And I have to confess, I'm disappointed that there is nothing in this episode regarding the allegations of spying and all of that she confronted Duncan's father with last episode. I really thought that we were going to have some conversation about that here, and there's nothing. So I was a little disappointed, and I'm hoping that'll... Chris is asking me about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's not related, Chris. No, I'm not going to be covering it, just to answer it, but no more unrelated questions. But yeah, so that's the one thing, because like last episode, I had kind of forgotten that when the episode started, I did expect them to be dealing with Aaron Eccles stabbing, and then it just isn't mentioned at all. So when somebody finally at the end was like, well, they were aired out of order, I was like, oh, okay. And this episode starts, we're dealing with Aaron Eccles pretty soon into the episode, and I'm like, all right, good, we're going to deal with this. But then what's going on with Duncan's dad doesn't come up. And I really need to know what's happening with that. Like, how do you, they had a bit of a blowout in the middle of the party. Like, granted, somebody got stabbed after, so it pales in comparison, but still. Episode MVP, probably Wallace. Wallace just does a lot of lifting. Like, he does a lot of the grunt work that I don't even want to say Veronica doesn't want to do. She couldn't do because she was going to risk exposing herself here. But yeah, I feel like Wallace probably is the one. I like too that she busts into this meeting of the Tritons, who for some reason kidnap her, put her in a trunk, and drive her to exactly where their meeting is going to be. Can anybody explain that one to me? What's going on there? Because I think it was them, right? They're the ones who abduct her, because there's like 4 of them, I think. I don't know why. Like, she's parked when Wallace helps get her out of the trunk. They're right there. Oh, so they just didn't drive the car. They just popped her in there. Oh, okay. Okay. For some reason, I thought that they moved the car. Because there's like a cut, if you guys remember. She like gets grabbed up, and then it cuts to her just in the trunk. So I thought that they moved her somewhere else. But all right, so they're just having their meetings in the school. Are you glad Wallace finally got to do something other than attendance records? Oh yes. I always like it when I wish that we got to see those scenes a little bit, but we don't really have time for all of that, I guess, because this is the episode was only 35 minutes, which I was surprised by. I thought it was going to be like 45. But I would like to see Wallace throwing some attitude around and whatnot at some point and doing this stuff, because we always just hear about it afterwards. And I'd also like to know what's going on with Wallace's mom too, because we got a little bit of that, and I sort of feel like Veronica getting led away in handcuffs is not going to do much to recommend her. If her mom winds up hearing about that, which I feel like she will, because apparently this town is just a gossip mill. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap this up because I have got to go. But thank you all so much for coming. Next week's episode is going to be at, let's see, this one's early, 2:30. Commissioned by Megan. So thank you very much, Megan. So yeah, 2:30, it's an earlier one. So be on the alert for that. And thank you all so much for coming. And I really hope, Megan's pointing out Election Day distraction. Good call. I forgot about that. I don't have a recording on that Tuesday evening either, so I'm going to be like, ugh, I'm going to be biting my nails. Vote for Beto. Okay, guys. I'll see you next week. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.